Hey, my name is Matthew Peterson. I am a trainer at Pragmatic Works here in Jacksonville, Florida. And for this week's blog, what I wanted to do is talk a little bit more about the patch function. Now, a video I did last week, I used the patch function in order to back up a record after somebody deleted it. So I called it the soft delete. So someone would delete a record in Power Apps, it would delete from the main source, but we actually wrote it in a separate source as a backup file. And so I want to continue the discussion about what else can the patch function do for you. So a lot of times in Power Apps, we create these forms to submit data back to our data source. And forms are wonderful. However, one of the issues I found with students when we do trainings, they go, you know what, these forms are fairly rigid. I don't have as much control of putting them exactly where I want on my screen. And I kind of, I can play with the layout a little bit, but I would rather have more control. But if I do that, how can I submit my data if I'm not submitting it on a form? Well, this is where the patch function comes into play. And so for this week, what I want to show you is how you can use a patch function and not have a form on your app to actually write back records to your data. So let's come over and take a look at the current app that I've been working with to demonstrate this. So as you see what we have on the screen here, and I'll just hit the play button, is just some very basic data. We're putting down someone's name, favorite color, if they're a cat or a dog person, some very pretend play data, but obviously you can make this work for you. And normally what a lot of people do is they'll say in order to make a new record, they'll make a form. They put a form onto their Power App. So they would go to new record and they've made a form with all of the fields. And so we would put in like a title, and let's say we're talking about Henry, his favorite color is purple. And the date for this is the January 12th. And he is a dog person and favorite number is 58. And we would click Submit Record. And we see Henry shows up right here. This is the record that we just created. This record is being sent to a SharePoint list. That's my data source. And, forms are pretty good for a lot of people. That's all they need to do. However, what if we wanted to have a little bit more flexibility, more design behind it? How could we do that? So let's take a look at how we can. And before we go any further, let me just show you, because a lot of times I think it's important to know what the data source looks like when you're developing your app, because sometimes it's easier to understand what's going on. So this is just a basic SharePoint site where the title column, I'm putting down the person's name. I've got favorite color, the date, cat or dog is a choice column, and then their favorite number. So I'm going to come over here, and instead of having a screen with just that static form, what I want to show is how we can do this using a screen and using the patch function. So I've created a new screen here called Patch Record. And the first thing I'm going to do is just put in a little bit of design here. So I'm going to put in a rectangle. And to put in a rectangle, I could go to the icon section and then search for rectangle. However, one of the useful things if you're new to Power Apps is if you come over to your left-hand navigation section, you have these buttons over here, and the plus button is going to give you all the popular things. That's one of the little sections of adding something into your app. And the rectangles are a very popular item that people put in, so Power Apps developers have put this into a quick action item here. So I'm going to put in a rectangle at this point. And now what we're going to do is I'm just going to quickly change the color of this. I have a variable set up, and I've done all this in pre-videos before this. But just to make this fairly quickly, I'm going to change the color very quick on this rectangle here. So we're going to go to the fill color. Instead of using their blue, I've got a variable called var sand. That's an RGB A code. And so I've got this here. And this is where I want to put my information for people to put in their record. So the first thing I want to do is give them an item to put in their name. So if I want my end user to have a place to put in data, I need to insert a text. So I'm going to come over here. I need to come up here to the insert ribbon, come over to input, and I'm going to make it a text input. And so now this allows my user to actually type something in. And I'm going to come over to the tree view. And what I like to do a lot of times is rename things to keep track of how everything is working. So at this point, for this input, I'm going to be where they put in their name. So I'm going to come over here and rename this. And I'm just going to rename this the txt input and then name. So that's just what I'm renaming it because it'll help me later on when I make my patch function. And then above that, I need to take that text input right here, and I need to take and get rid of the default. And to get rid of this default, I don't want, because technically this is what would be put in for the record is the word text input. So I don't want anything to be in there. So I'm just erasing the default value so that it's going to start off with completely blank. And then above it, I probably want to tell someone what this is for. So I'm going to go over to the insert ribbon, just going to put in a label. We'll put it up here. And instead of the text being text, I'm just going to put down here that it is name. And I'm going to come over to the tree view just to relabel this. And this is nothing that you have to do to make your patch function work. This is just going to help me in terms of making it. So this is going to be, oh, it says label name is already being used. So let me try that one more time. So we're going to be label, and then we'll go name. And so I've got my first part. So now my end user is going to be able to put their name in. So now what's the next thing that we want to put into this list? Well, the next thing that I want them to be able to do is I want them to be able to put in the date. So the date, I don't want them to actually have to type it in. Instead, I'd rather them have a little date picker. So we're going to put a different input option here. It's going to be a date picker rather than a text input. So let's take a look at how we're going to do that. So the way that we do this is we're going to go to the insert ribbon again. We're going to come down to input. And this time, we're going to select date picker. And so now we have a date picker, which is perfect. We're probably going to want a label for this for them to select their date. So I'm just going to take my name label. And normally you would, make this prettier and you would make sure the formatting is good. We'd probably make it larger, bolder. But to keep the video short here, we're not going to worry about all the formatting at this point. So I'm just going to take this name label right here and I'm going to copy it and paste it. So I just did a Control-C, Control-V. And now I'm going to give it a new name here. So instead of label name 1, this is my label for the date. And I'm going to change it to date. So far so good. We're creating our own kind of form here in the background without actually inserting a form. But now I have control to place these wherever I want. I can move anything within this wherever I want it to actually go. So I've got the name and I've got the date. The next thing that I'm going to want to have is a drop down in order for my person, my user, to pick either if they're a cat person or a dog person. And since it's a list of choices, I'm going to use a drop down box that's going to show them all the choices that are valid for our SharePoint list. So when we go to the insert ribbon this time, we're going to come over to the input. And now instead of text input, and instead of the date picker, we're going to use a third one, a drop down. And you use a drop down when you actually have different choices. So I'm going to bring this down. And again, right now, it's just a default standard drop down. So I'm going to rename this. So let's rename this to drop DRP. Let me zoom in over here for you. DRP, DWN, cat, dog. That looks pretty good to me. Now, what we have to do here is we have to tell the Power Apps program what data should it be accessing for this dropdown. We need to give it the choices that somebody actually has. So we're going to have to tie that in here. And the way that we do that is we're going to come up to the items. And where it says items, it currently says that it's just the dropdown sample. It's the default sample items that are part of every dropdown. Well, what we want to do is we want to access the SharePoint list, which is called, and mine is called the patch records, and I want to reference this cat or dog column. So the way that we do that is we're going to come on over back to our items, and we're going to get rid of what we currently see, and we want to access the items that are in the patch records. So the patch records, we want to say, look at the patch records, which is a data table. And the problem that we have here is it's saying, hey, you want a whole table. I can't put a whole table as a drop-down list. You need to be more specific. So what we want to do is we want to tell them, look at the values in our cat or dog, because it's a choice column. So we say, look at that column, and then look at the values that are in that column. And here's where we're going to come into an issue. It's going to say, well, there's a lot of different things here. How many times do you want me to put cat, or how many times do you want me to put dog? So we're also going to use the function called distinct. So that way it only gives me the unique values that are available in this column itself. So as we come on over, I'm going to go right in front of patch records now. And I'm going to say, let's go take a look at the patch records. I want to look at the distinct values from the patch records. So it says, okay, what's the source? Patch records. So once I've given that, I can now move to the next kind of thing that this needs, because that's the way that these functions work. It tells you the steps that you need to give it. So we've given it the source of patch records. So now what I need to do is go comma, and now I give it the expression, what is the column? And I want it to go with the cat or the dog. So I'm going to go cat or dog. And here's the problem. When we do cat or dog, because it's a choice column, we have to say dot value. So we go cat or dog dot value. So now it only is going to return the values from that. And now here's what we've got. If we take a look, and if I were to hit the play button real quick, just to show you, when I hit this drop down now, it's showing me cat or dog. It's only giving me the distinct values that that column can actually take. We'll click on don't show me this again. So great, we've got that. Well, what else do we probably need? It's pretty self-explanatory, but I'm just going to take one of these labels, the date label, going to put over here. Let's rename that. I'm going to rename this label cat dog. Looks good. Let's give it the text. So I'm going to come up here to the formula bar, say this is cat or dog. So far, so good. And the last thing that I want to do here is put in the favorite color. So again, just like the name, the favorite colors can be fairly simple. We're just going to let them type in their favorite color. So we're going to use a text input, and that's going to be it. So to make things easy, let's copy and paste what we already have from earlier. So I'm going to take my text input from earlier, once we click off here. With my text input name, I'm going to Control-C, Control-V, going to bring it on down. But this time, this is now going to be, let's rename this. This is going to be text input, and then we're going to put color. Great. And then let's take the name label, copy, paste. I'm just doing Control-C's, Control-V's here. And let's name this our favorite color. All right. So here's what we've got. We have everything we need. We have the sections for our end user to type in what they want. The only thing we now have to do is we need a button that after they've inserted their data, they click the button and then it writes this data back to our patch record SharePoint list. So normally on a regular form, it would just be a submit button and the code would be submit form and then the name of the form. Well, this isn't a form. These are 4 separate items. So we have to use a patch command that says, hey, look at these 4 different items and take the stuff from them and put it in as a new record. And that's where the patch command comes in. So let's take a look at how we can do this. We're going to come over to the insert ribbon and we are going to put in a button and we'll bring it on down here. We could change the color. Let me change the color to make it stand out a little bit. I'll go again. Let's see what other variable colors I have in here. Let's go with light aqua. Let's see if that works here. Oops, I put it in the wrong section for the on select. We definitely do not want it there. So that was an errant click. Let me go back to the fill color of my button. And we're going to go var aqua. Does that stand out pretty well? That looks good here. And I'll make it really big. Obviously, we would make this a lot nicer for our final product. But just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to say submit record. All right. And now what we need to do is we now need to give it what happens when somebody selects this. So for this button, we're going to go now to the on select command. So now I'm at the on select. And now this is where we use the patch function. So we start off with the word patch. And let me zoom in here. So we're going to say let's patch. And patch says, okay, where do you want to put in this record? Or where do you, and patch is also for updating records. But we're using the patch function here just to make a brand new one. So they're saying, where do you want to put this new record? Well, my SharePoint list that this is all going to is going into the patch records SharePoint list. So now I've got my source. Perfect. So now we're going to hit the comma. And now it's going to say record. And it's going to say, well, what record are you trying to update? Well, I'm not trying to update a record. I am trying to make a brand new one. And so whenever you want to make a brand new record with the patch command, the next thing you do when it comes to this step is you go with defaults. So we go with defaults here. And I'm going to do Shift Enter just to go to a new line to make this a little bit easier to see. And I'll expand out my window here as well. So, okay, so now we want to go, what record are we trying to do? We want a brand new one. So we use defaults. And so we're going to come right here and say we want to use the defaults. Perfect. And then when you click defaults, it's going to go, okay, again, tell me where this source is going. Where are you putting this record in? And again, we are putting this in the patch records. So defaults, patch records. We're going to close that off because it says give me a source. We're just following their instructions here. All right, and now I'm going to come down and hit comma because I've told it the record. And now this part, the update, I know that's kind of misleading. It says update. Well, we're not updating, we're making a new one. But if you're doing the update or making the new one, when you get to this step, what they're asking you to do at this point is they're saying, tell me the columns that you are either updating your record or making the new record, and then reference what you want to go into those columns. And you're going to do that with curly braces or fancy brackets, as my old I used to be an algebra teacher, and my students would always call these the fancy brackets when we were doing like order of operations. So let's take a look. We're going to do Shift Enter. So the first thing I do, so I put in my fancy brackets here, and I want to update the title column. So the title column, if you remember my SharePoint list, so we're going to do title, then you put a colon after it, and now we put what do we want to actually to go into that title column. Where our title column is where we are putting in their names. And if we take a look, the name is coming from our text input name control. So I need to tell Power Apps to look at my text input name control. So I'm going to go txt input name, there it is. And it says, well, that's just a control. What do you want me to get out of that? So I have to put dot, and I say, what do we want from that control? I want the text from that control. So dot text. And then I close that off with the fancy bracket. So that's the first column that I want to put data in. Then I put a comma to go to the next column. Well, the next column I want, and it doesn't matter what order you do this in. I'm just going to keep it in this order that I have it, but it does not matter how you decide to type this in. So I'm going to say, well, the next one I want to update is we got the date next. So we're going to go to the date column. So date, we're going to tab that over. Where is the date coming from? The date is coming from my date picker. So I'm going to say, go look at the date picker, and it's date picker 1. And as you look at the date picker 1, again, they're saying, well, that's a control, so what do you want from that control? So I'm going to hit dot, and then I want to tell them to go with the date that we selected, the selected date. So dot selected date. And then we're going to close that off with the fancy brace as well. And then you can see how we're going to keep this going. Now we're going to move into, and I'll zoom in again here. Now we're going to move into the cat or the dog. So we're going to go fancy brace. Here's our cat or dog column. And then where's the cat or dog column coming from? Cat or dog is coming from that drop-down of cat dog. So I come over and I say, go look at my drop-down that has the cat dog. There it is. Again, they're saying, well, that's a control. What do you want from it? So I got to go dot. What do I want from it? Well, I want from there, I want the selected text. What did we actually make a selection on? Because it was a choice column. So selected text. And then we're going to close that off with the fancy brace as well. And notice what's happening here. This is great about Power Apps. See how this is in blue, this is in green, and this is in like a purplish? Notice that when we're referencing it, it's letting you know what you're referencing on your screen. Blue for the text input name, green for the date picker, and purple for the drop-down. So that's kind of helpful to keep track of where you're at if your names weren't as good in your tree view. All right, last thing that we need to do is do the final one, which was our favorite number. So we're going to say, let's go look at our favorite number. Or actually, you know what? I think we did favorite color on this one. Yep, we did favorite color. And where is our favorite color coming from? Our favorite color is coming from our text input color. So we're going to go look at our text input color. Dot. What do we want from it? We want the text from it. So dot text. And then we're going to close that out. And now those are all the columns. You might be saying, wait, Matt, we have an issue here. According to your SharePoint list, you have another column called favorite number. You are not putting that in here. That's okay. That just means when we create this record, a number is not going to be put in for that record. We're still going to create the record, but a number is just going to be a blank value there. There is not going to be one. So now that we have that, the last thing that we have to do is we've done the update / created the new record. We just have to close it out with the parentheses. And now we've done it. The last thing that I want to do is after we've submitted the record, I don't want to stay on this screen. So I'm going to add a new function in. And whenever you want to add in a new function, you have to go to, you have to put in a semicolon to say I want to start a brand new function here. So I'm going to put in a semicolon. and I'm going to say let's navigate back to my home screen, which my home screen is original data. So we're going to say navigate to the original data screen, and let's see if it'll pick it up this time, original data screen. And then we could pick a comma how we want it to go. We'll go crazy, screen transition cover right. You can pick whatever you want there. Close it out. And if all is right in the world, and I didn't make any mistakes with my stuff, and I don't see any problems in my app checker here, let's see if this is actually going to work. So let's hit the play button. Let's put in a name here. So we will go with Jackson, and we will go with a date of, we'll say the 15th of January. We will select that Jackson is a cat person, and favorite color is, we'll go with aqua. We're going to click submit record, and we click submit record, and there we go. Jackson, favorite color aqua, cat or dog cat person. Did it really work? Let's go back to the SharePoint site. I'll refresh here, and there it is, Jackson. And notice what we see. With Jackson Aqua, what does he not have? A favorite number? Because that was not part of our patch command. So the usefulness again of this patch command is what you get is now on this screen, if you don't like the way that this is formatted, if I decide to put this date picker way over here in the upper right hand corner, and I put the favorite color way down here, and I click on play, and I come over to make a new record, and I say that this is for Rishi, and the date is for January 11th, and Rishi is a dog person, and his favorite color is red, and I click submit record. It did not matter that it was all over in different locations. Now, are there some other things that we want to do with this patch command? Yeah, there's some other things I want to do. In my next video, I want to show you how we can take this and not have, because you might be saying, well, Matt, what if someone accidentally hits that submit record and there's nothing in these boxes? And you want to make sure that data is in there before they actually hit the submit record. Is there something we can do for that? We sure can, and that's what we're going to tackle in the next video. So I hope you found some good use for this patch command. I hope you liked the video. Please subscribe, like, leave me comments. Let me know if there's something else you want me to do with this to go a little bit further with it, because I enjoy making these videos once a week for you. So again, I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you in the next one.